it's Scott, ROCKFILE, back with another podcast review. Going back and talking about the 2020 film Underwater. I've done a review of this movie before. I think I've even done two of them. I did it when I saw it in the theater back in January of 2020. Then I think I did it when the Blu-ray came out. Well, I rewatched it because, I just wanted something to kind of park my brain and something I'd seen before and wouldn't have to kind of get into it or do a review of it. And I thoroughly enjoyed the film more this time than any time before. I don't think I knew what to expect when I saw it back in January 4 years ago. And watching it now and knowing more about it now, watching some of the extras, really enjoyed it. I think the movie does have a few flaws, but overall, more people should have seen this movie. It's creepy, it's scary, it's claustrophobic. It takes place underwater and very deep underwater. Kristen Stewart, Vincent Cassel, T.J. Miller, poor guy, John Gallagher Jr., there's a few stars in it. Jessica Henwick, you recognize a few of these actors in the film. But the whole story is told through Kristen Stewart's perspective. And I think that was probably a good idea, although she's got a lot of voiceover in the beginning and a lot of voiceover at the end and not a whole lot of voiceover in the middle, which doesn't... She does talk to herself a little bit, but I just think there should have been a little bit more to the through line for the movie. That may be one minor mistake. But other than that, she does a great job in the role. She plays a very short-haired, very technical-minded, kind of a nerd who is stuck on this underwater drilling platform when all hell breaks loose. One of the greatest things about the movie is there is no BS. The credits tell the story of we're drilling deeper than we've ever drilled before, and then the movie starts. And then within a few minutes, all hell's breaking loose, and it doesn't really stop. As action movies go, this is pretty much nonstop. That may be part of the detriment of the movie is we really don't get to know any of the characters. We know Kristen Stewart the best, Vincent Cassel the captain. We know a little bit more as the movie goes on about a few of the other characters, but really they just, there are people who are going to die. It's a thrilling horror movie. You don't feel as badly about them because you really haven't spent a whole lot of time with them. That may be a detriment, but I think what they were going for was more this visceral experience of the movie. It moves quick, It's about an hour and 40 minutes. It had a $50 to $65 million budget and only made about $40 million. Never got a 4K release except on digital streaming, which... This movie really needs a 4K release with a nice Dolby Atmos soundtrack. I'm sure the streaming is fine, but here in the United States, and there was an Australian 4K plan, but with things changing with Fox and Disney and everything, it never happened. So there's been no 4K hard copy release of this movie. I could upgrade my digital copy. I bought the Blu-ray when it came out, and it came with a digital copy. If I want to upgrade that into 4K on my streaming service, it's $15, which seems a bit much for a movie I already own. But I watched it again in 1080p, and it was fine. It's just HDR would help the black levels. There's a lot of dark stuff in this movie. Not to give too much away, but this is one of those movies that was filmed dry to look wet. That means, unlike movies like James Cameron's The Abyss that was literally filmed underwater, it was very hard, technical to do that. A lot of other movies that came out at that time and now, like Leviathan, they were filmed in dry environments, and they piped in smoke and special effects and particulate matter and that kind of stuff to make you feel like you're underwater. I think this movie does a better job with that. I'm watching it closely this time, knowing this, and it looks underwater to me. All of it. Like, they did really well with it. By the time you find out what's causing the issues with the station and everything, and it gets into that really deserves a whole podcast. There were some extras that really describe when they were first deciding what kind of creatures were going to be the problem with this. They wanted to go with things like squid, octopus, things like that, things we had seen, things we didn't know. But the more they designed it, and the more what fit the story and what the characters were going through. Part of this is what Kristen Stewart's going through, what's going on in her mind, how is she dealing with some pretty extreme situations. The movie is actually done very well. William Eubank, who was the director. I first caught sight of his name on a movie called The Signal that came out a few years before. It's got Lawrence Fishburne in it. Kind of has a almost Dark City vibe to it, especially with the ending. But The Signal, if you've never seen it, it's a really cool little science fiction movie. That let me know that this director knows what he's doing, and he's directed a couple movies since Underwater. But because this movie was dropped into theaters in January at a time when most people expect bad films, and because it is a movie that kind of starts at a run and just keeps going, it just, I don't think got the props, I don't know. The soundtrack is really good. The special effects are flawless. When you get to the big surprises at the end, it's pretty massively done. There's really not too many flaws other than you just don't get a whole lot of character development, but this is supposed to be a roller coaster ride of a action thriller sci-fi horror movie, and I think it hits on all levels. There was an alternate ending, which I'm glad they didn't use. Kristen Stewart pretty much wanted the ending that we get, and studio wanted them to try some other things. I'm glad they went with what they got. I think there could be more. There definitely deserves to be a sequel. The ending has an ending, but you find out most of what happens in the credits at the end. And that's kind of interesting and well done, just like the beginning was done with the credits. But it also leaves a lot of questions. And I would have loved for them to do more with this idea, with this location, with this creatures. Anyway. If you haven't seen Underwater, I would start. It's moved up into my highly recommended. Again, knowing that you're not going to know much about the characters, that this is going to be a movie that just starts and goes. But we have a lot of action movies that way these days. Movies that just kind of start and go. Zissou, you don't know a whole much about him or anything. It just kind of starts and goes. At 95 minutes, this movie has no filler. It moves quickly. It's very exciting. Like I said, the special effects are pretty much perfect. I'm amazed what they did on a nearly $65 million budget. It looks much more expensive than that. Here's my biggest complaint about the entire film. At the beginning, it tells us like the crew is 329. I don't think we ever see more than 6 to 10 people. We see a few bodies, and we find out at the end that only, well, I don't want to give anything away, but not all of the escape pods made it to the surface. So where were all the other people? If they were all wiped out in the initial earthquake situation that happens at the beginning of the film, I get it, but we didn't find very many bodies, and there wasn't too much of that to let us think that there was like the crew of the Enterprise down there. It really seemed like a small skeleton crew, but if that's the only complaint I have, it probably had something to do with budget and just not wanting to just show a whole bunch of dead bodies and fake it, I guess. But other than that, that was the only thing, because I had never really noticed how many crew members there were. It said like 329. I'm like, wow, that seems like a lot of people for that base, although it is a pretty big thing. And she does run, it's an earthquake, at least what they think at the beginning. And so there's water spraying in, and then things are starting to break apart, and she's running down hallways yelling for people and beating on doors and stuff, but nobody comes out. Nobody joins her, and then one person joins her on a run, and they have to cut off 2 other people, and this is all at the very, 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 very beginning, but you just don't get a sense that there's hundreds of people on this platform, although there probably should have been. The bathrooms are very large. The hallways are pretty large. It's kind of, yes, there are people who have compared this to kind of an Alien underwater. And, well, are you going to have any claustrophobic situation where people are being chased by creatures and whatever not be compared to Alien because it's just that good? Yeah, but, this movie came out in 2020. Alien came out 40 years earlier. Anyway. I really enjoyed it this time around and would recommend it for people who want to see an underwater thriller kind of movie that turns into a bit of a horror movie. I really thought most of it was incredibly well done. It deserves more than it's ever gotten. And where is my 4K steel book with Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision HDR? I think this movie would kill in that presentation. At some point, I'm going to put it in my wish list on my streaming service. If it goes on sale, I'll upgrade and let you know what it looks like. But as a Blu-ray, it looks fine. As a streaming 1080p copy, it looks fine. It could look spectacular. It could sound. Now, the surround sound is good. I just would really love Dolby Atmos. I think Underwater deserves more. Go back and check it out. It might be better than you remember. Underwater from 2020 with Kristen Stewart and directed by William Eubank. I recommend. Put the Scott thumb of approval on it. I'm ROCKFILE. Links are below if you want to support the channel. I really do appreciate you listening to a podcast. Have a spectacular day.